So nowadays, investing is the hot topic, but funnily enough, it's been made to almost look like a game with meme stocks and many other trendy ways to invest. I thought it was quite funny, but I also thought it'd be quite interesting if I were to use my knowledge of video games. By the way, I played video games a lot when I was a teen, much less now.
Stop the cap.
But I thought it'd be really cool to discuss how video games use money, how the systems have their own economy, and if there's anything possibly that we could learn from video games to better use our finances. Hey everyone, thanks for joining in. My name is Daniel Darko, and I'm so glad that you're here. I would like to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe, and also hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date with any video that I make and release. Now, I used to play MMO games a lot in my teens, and so it was really cool because you had all these different players from many different places, many different countries, all working together or combating each other and going towards different objectives. Now, in order to fully flesh out every part of the game, in order to thrive and prosper, you needed items, and you needed, of course, cash or gold or any other in-game currency. And it was always interesting seeing how players would use the in-game systems that are made by game masters, but at the same time create their own little systems and intricacies in order to trade and to barter and to get what they need. And so the first thing that comes to mind is the auction house. And so for many different games, I used to play Dragon Nest back in the day, and even before that, there was things like MapleStory where you had some sort of trading market, some sort of auction house where players would be able to list the items that they own for a fee and possibly sell the item in an auction-like style to others who can also purchase it, and then you were able to retrieve the item also for a fee. Now, the important thing about that was knowing that sometimes items exist, but you're not always able to get to them because they aren't posted on the auction house. Another thing that was pretty interesting to know is that auction house had limitations. Maybe there was a limit on how much items you could posts. Maybe there was a limit as to how broad this item would be able to, or how easy this item would be able to find. And there were some other cool caveats knowing about when to kind of check the auction house, when an item is heavily requested, when is the best time to try to time the market, if anything. And so in terms of how we look at our finances, not everything is done by auction. I know if you're looking at the stock market, it may really feel like you're in an auction house fighting for your life. However, one thing that's pretty cool to know is that there are times where you can buy things straight from vendors like NPCs in video games. You can probably go straight to a store and purchase things, but sometimes you can also win out by getting a specific item that you want from some type of auction. For example, eBay is a really good place to get really cheap items. And so if you're patient enough, if you're able to work with that middleman and kind of get a more specific niche avenue, you can probably save a lot of money and get items that you really want and need without going through the fuss of going to a vendor and paying a premium price for sometimes not even a premium item. So that was a pretty cool thing to consider when I remembered auction houses and trading marketplaces as compared to just trading an item with another player hand on hand. But there was another thing to consider was stimulus and inflation. So it was quite common for what we would call power creep to happen, where in order for the game to feel fresh and new, everything kind of needs to be upscaled. And so maybe players hit a higher level, maybe monsters are stronger and are also higher level, and maybe they drop more goods and more money and things of that sort. And so something that used to cost a certain amount of money over time, just by more players actively investing into the economy, whether it's by their time, whether it's by grinding to get certain items or whatever the case may be, is that you would find that there'd be a greater influx of gold or money or certain valuables. So then in order to buy the newer items, they'll be priced at a much higher price to kind of balance out how much new money players were getting. At the same side, items that were older but maybe still had the same value of use would also need to increase their price because it wouldn't really be worth that amount of money. And so in our world's economy, typically we want inflation to be at about 2 to 3%. Hasn't really been there in the past couple months, maybe a year now. It hasn't been too good, right? But the cool thing to know is that you can kind of expect this to happen, and there's certain strategies that you can employ when there is inflation or when there's stimulus. So for example, there'd be times where compensation is needed, and perhaps the game master would send tons of money to all players, or to most players for that matter, in order to kind of offset a balance or to help. Now temporarily everyone thought that that would be amazing. Look at what I can do with my my compensation money, and you'd go and you'd buy something, but then you realize that because everyone has that same amount, items that were listed on the auction house start to increase. People wanted a bit more bang for their buck because they realized that money wasn't as valuable, or gold or whatever the currency is wasn't as valuable. Not too different from real life. In the games, this led to an inflation of which I probably can't even measure the amounts, but in real life we know that with the pandemic changes, there was really an influx of financial support, which of course was needed for a lot of people, whether it may be for businesses or students, and many other ways in which money was really printed by, if you're in America, you have Jay Powell. Over here we have Tiff Macklem in Canada. And so money was being released by the government, but then at the same time, these two figures were also lowering interest rates. And of course, over time, we now kind of had to correct all that was done by raising interest rates. So in order to curb inflation, that was always an issue that we had in the game, was that stimulus would always lead to temporary joy, but long-lasting pain. And it was really hard to kind of go back for that, because this would always happen every now and then, even without stimulus packages. Now in real life, we know that right now we're still suffering from the stimulus packages that we've gotten to some degree, in some way, shape, or form, and we're hoping that with these interest rates that have just increased by another 0.25%, we're hoping that the Fed, if you're in America, and of course Bank of Canada, if you're in Canada, will kind of have it at the same level for a bit, and hopefully slowly drop down, so that inflationary measures are really just being taken into account, and then inflation could hopefully go down. Another thing was merchanting. And so with the auction house trading system, whatever it may be, there is a way that people found to make money pretty easily, and it was actually really smart. So what you would do is sometimes you'll need insider knowledge. Of course, that should be illegal, but in some case you maybe have an idea of, let's say, a new patch or something else that is going to come and affect the game. And so what people would do is that in preparation for that, they would figure out what items that they kind of need to keep for maybe a later day to hopefully sell at a better time. Now, this can also be considered as timing the market to some degree, but there are some things that generally will increase with value over time. And so sometimes people would purchase certain items that they know may not be the hot buzz right now, but maybe there is a low supply. And so by having some money, by purchasing all that they can, they would realize that eventually a great need would come, and they'll be able to list these items on the auction house, for example, for a much higher price. And you're able to sell these items for sometimes even up to 50% higher, maybe even twice as high as it was when you bought it. And so people are making a killing and a profit by really understanding the times, really understanding supply and demand, and making use of that. Now, for most of us, we aren't producers, and we probably don't have money to mass buy something and sell it off at a higher price. But what I mean to introduce with that concept is, hey, like maybe you're thinking about purchases, maybe you're thinking about things that you currently have, and I would really urge you to consider the value of that item. If it's something that you can buy and use, kind of get your multi-purpose, multi-use out of it, but are you also able to sell it afterward? Will that thing actually increase in value? Most things are depreciating assets like cars, but surprisingly, throughout the pandemic, my car actually shot up in value. For most people, a lot of your cars actually shot up in value, which is out of the norm, but sometimes it can happen. So you really want to be careful and knowing kind of what is going on, and really take that into account when you make your purchases, because maybe you'll be able to sell it for a pretty good price. In fact, maybe you'll be able to make a killing by investing in certain products and services. A lot of people take this into analysis when they do their deep dives of stocks and whatnot, and they really want to figure out, hey, am I making a wise investment now for something that should be profitable later? Now, you may not always know that, but at least in the context of games, we usually the original source of the games in, let's say, Japan or Korea or somewhere of that sort would get these updates first. And so eventually we would look and see and say, hey, something there is important. There something, a product, for example, or an item is going to have more value later because it's able to serve for these new purposes. Or maybe a new item will come out, and so this item won't really be as useful anymore. So it's better if I sell this item now, or it's better if I hold this item or prepare to buy this item for when it comes out. You kind of see where I'm going with this? So we don't know the future, and we don't know when certain changes like that will come. Although it is very important to stay up to date with news, because if certain companies are interested in doing things, for example, Google starting their own language model AI similar to ChatGPT called Bear, it's really interesting to keep an eye on these trends, because they may flop, but if it doesn't, then you can probably expect that Alphabet will do well. Or if it doesn't do too well, at least initially, then you can expect the stock to drop. All that being said, is pay attention to the information that's around. Know the news, know the times. Try your best to maybe not necessarily time the market, but consider, hey, if a new item is coming out, I should really be careful about what I'm spending right now, because my purchase may not be worth it, or my purchase might be even better if it's going to be discontinued and they're going to introduce something that isn't necessary. Another thing that's really important I learned from gaming from honestly the beginning was saving. Honestly, saving was very important. It was very common to see a very expensive item and think, hey, I'm never going to be able to purchase that item. And so you spend your money on little things here and there, and only small upgrades, and you're not really able to do more. But what I found most effective for me in most video games that I played, even not MMOs, but just other console games, where if I was able to actually be disciplined and save money, then by grinding, by whether it's killing monsters or doing all sorts of things to really level up and be prepared for the next step, by really saving, you'll be able to make a big upgrade. You'll be able to get, a better weapon. You'll be able to get better armor, better gear, stats, whatever. You're able to make a bigger jump, which allowed you to actually earn more. Maybe you're able to enter into a new grinding zone. Maybe you're able to enter into a new raid or something like that. What you're able to accomplish increases because you invested better, help you to create more income. The equivalent would be probably like going to school, because in doing so you can probably guarantee that you're getting skills from that investment, and hopefully those skills that you get help you to generate more revenue. And so that even if it's a heavy cost with time and money and a whole lot of dedication, it will pay off in the end because you're getting your return on investment. This could apply to so many other scenarios. In fact, it doesn't always work with education, at least with some people, but typically education degrees are very valuable. And there's many other things that you can invest in, but your mindset should always be, hey, how can I make a good return on investment? Even if it may take sacrifice, even if it may mean not buying the things that I want here and there, is there something I could buy that will truly benefit me, or something I can buy that will help me to generate more revenue and hopefully perform better and do the things that you want to do? Because honestly, every time I did save to get a big item or wherever the case is, it gave me more freedom to do the things I wanted in the game and ultimately enjoy it more. Another thing that I learned from video games I thought would be helpful to share with you is scamming. In every generation, in every time, in every place, there will always be those grifters, those scammers, those people who, rather than just working hard with their hands, would rather go and take it from someone else. It's unfortunate, but you do have to be you have to, in some cases, really consider what people are offering and really follow why it is that they're doing what they do. Follow the money trail. Don't just look at what they say, but also look at how they live their life, if possible. I remember on some games, people would try to get certain in-game currencies and use it to purchase another currency, and there was always this talk of how reputable people would be and whatnot, because you would hate to send money and not get the money back and get scammed, or someone could easily deceive you. I remember on, I think, MapleStory, someone was so slick that they would put an item in a trade and then cancel the trade and act like something went wrong, and then put in find another item when you trade again that looks similar to the item but really isn't. But if you don't hover over the item, you won't really know if it was a true item or not. And then before you know, you could put your money in and send trade because the first time was legit. And then you find out you got duped and they change channels, they disconnect, and you're sitting there like, I got scammed. And then your heart sinks, you know? Terrible feeling. It's happened to me. Scammers are terrible. It may happen in a similar way. Of course, some of you may have been scammed. Some of you may have invested in cryptocurrencies. Not all cryptocurrencies are bad, but I definitely do not like cryptocurrencies as a whole. And you could take one look at the industry and see how much dollars have been essentially vaporized. It's not that all cryptocurrencies are bad, but cryptocurrency as a whole is just not regulated the way that you would like it to be regulated. And a lot of people have been using it as this get-rich-quick type of scheme where you just rug pull other people. And so that's just one way in which scams can occur. Scams occur in many other ways. Think of MLMs. It's never a good thing when you're invited to someone's house and you get there and there's a PowerPoint presentation and they're telling you about how knives or a drink or a certain skincare lotion is going to revolutionize everything and make you your own boss. Never a good feeling. But overall, scamming is something that you always have to be careful of. Every good gamer knows that scamming is something that they have to watch out for. And just like that in real life, any person who is knowledgeable about finances or is at least trying to just make sure their dollars are able to go where they want them to go has to have coverage, has to have protection, has to have insurance, has to follow protocols to just make sure that their money is able to do what they want it to do. So scamming is something that I learned from a young age from video games. It's definitely something that I'm attuned to and watching out for now that I begin to invest and do many other things with my money as an adult. Putting the controller down, right? How do we actually apply all of these things? Well, we talked about scamming, we talked about saving, we talked about insider trading and just really trying to understand the times and the news and what other people are doing so we could kind of evaluate how we should respond. Merchanting, stimulus and inflation, as well as trading as a whole. One important thing to really know of is there's only so much that you can do. I mean, you can't control all of those factors. Even in something that is as free as a game is still pretty limiting and disciplined and very structured. And of course, as a player, you kind of have to realize that you're kind of just a part of this bigger economy, and you can do your best to just work within it and gain your freedom, but you can't control everything. In fact, it's probably a good thing that we can't. And so in the same way, I would say don't stress too hard about your finances in life. Learn what you can, pay attention to what other people are doing. Sometimes you want to do the opposite thing that other people are doing, and you really want to follow the example of the people who are where you want to be. Of course, take into account survivorship bias. You don't just want to listen to those who made it, but you also want to be careful of those who haven't made it, because maybe those who have made it aren't really a good representation of what works and what doesn't work. So you always want to be on your toes. You want to get as much information as you can. You want to try to really apply those critical thinking skills and really listen to your gut sometimes and just really figure out that if something looks a little fishy, it might be good to take another glance and then take a third glance and maybe take a fourth glance and bring it up to someone who knows what they're doing, and go and seek a professional who could really iron things out for you and help you where exactly you are. And so with that, these are a couple of things that I learned from video games. I thought it was just really fun and cool to think about how I've learned about money from video games. If you guys are interested in this, I will probably make a part 2 a bit more detailed with other examples. But there's many ways that we can care about our finances as we navigate the culture. And speaking about culture, there is definitely something going on with the identity that people have or would rather like to have, and how we view ourselves and our work in terms of hustle culture and minimalism. So if you want to learn more about my thoughts on that, then you can click this video right here and it will take you there. Thank you all for listening. My name is Daniel, and I'm just so glad that you're able to be here. If you enjoyed the video in any sense, please subscribe and like and comment down, because I'd like to hear your thoughts on this and many other thoughts. See ya.